So much has happened in Colorado history as we sit here now and think about it. We have watched mining booms, we've watched trappers and traders come through Colorado, we've watched the rise and fall of many great mining barons, we have watched people start to come in for agricultural reasons, and we've also started to think about how we want to use the land in Colorado. I want to back up a little bit today and help you understand how and why Denver became our capital. So as you know, or perhaps gleaned from past chapters, in 1861, Colorado became a territory. When Colorado became a territory in 1861, it basically became the governor's decision as to where the capital would be. So for quite a long time, what happened is that we had several governors come in and out of power, and there was a lot of look at where the capital should be based on who that governor was. So for the years between about 1861 and 1867, we have a fight between Denver, Pueblo, Colorado Springs, and Golden to become the capital of Colorado. Now, why might there be a fight over where Colorado's capital is going to be? Well, as we know, a capital generates a lot of money, and that money comes from having revenue come in and out by way of manufacturing goods. It also draws a lot of people to the area. So Pueblo is a great example of why we might want a capital down in the southern portion of Colorado. What they found when they began meeting early on is that the people coming from Pueblo couldn't speak English, and obviously they would be at a disadvantage coming into any other area of Colorado, and they wanted people to come to them. Well, everybody else basically thought the same way. So for a while, they thought a nice compromise was going to be Colorado Springs because you could meet somewhere in the middle. But then Golden took hold of the territorial capital for about 5 years. We finally see it push back into Denver in 1867. 1867 marks the year where they finally put down some legislation, not that they had before, but legislation that stuck. So what I'm going to basically outline now for you is why that legislation stuck. Several things happened after the passage of that legislation in 1867. The first thing that happens chronologically is in 1868, somebody with the last name of Brown had come into Denver and bought the land, which now is the land where the Capitol is built. He decides to donate that land, and once he donates the land and the territory decides that it's going to become the land for the capital, what we see is a lot of people come and start to build those beautiful homes you see all around the Denver capital today. A lot of the homes that you see were built when this land was donated. People swiped up the land around the capital, people like Tabor, people like the Browns, and you see a lot of the prominent mining families as well as a lot of the very wealthy families in early Denver start to build around the capital. That's one reason why Denver stuck as the capital, is because all of a sudden you have this influx of money and people with a lot of money coming into Denver. The next huge thing that happened in the 1870s is that Denver basically gets all of these railroad connections. The Union Pacific connects them to the east, the Kansas Pacific connects them to St. Louis and Kansas City, Denver and Rio Grande connects them down to Santa Fe, and those connections continue. Once they solidify all these connections, what that means is that they are able to get goods in and out more quickly. People are able to come to Denver and settle in a more easy fashion than they were before. And we see that those connections continue. And the connections through what we presently know today as Boulder, Berthoud, Longmont, and Fort Collins, as well as Loveland, those local connections are also made in the late 1870s. So the trickle-down effect for this railroad connection is basically what you see below here. Because we have this connection to the rest of the world, or the rest of the United States, what we see is that people are willing to build businesses here. So we see a lot of businesses start to pop up. Warehouses, distribution centers start to pop up in Denver because they have a way to transport their goods in and out of Colorado. Moreover, they have a way to transport their goods throughout the United States now. We also see the smelters and refining industries start to build their businesses in Denver. People as far as away as Montana and people along the railroad tracks will actually send their ore down to Denver for smeltering. You can imagine what that must have looked like, a pretty dirty city at the time. But it actually led to a great economic boom for Denver. The other big thing that helped people come in and want to settle were, because we had the railroads, a lot of people came in, and we see the agricultural boom, which we just talked about. People were able to come in easily, and they started to settle along the railroads where they could transport their goods along the railroads. So by 1880, Denver had solidified its position as the capital of Colorado after a lot of fighting, and it was then the 5th largest urban city in the United States. From that, we see a lot of problems arise. Between about 1889 and 1912, political corruption is rampant. People like Speer, who you'll learn about this week. Speer was a remarkable man for a lot of reasons. He was a people person, but he is a prime example of political corruption. And I want you to read a little bit more about him in your textbook and understand how he basically worked the system so that he could stay in political power and so that other people could basically maintain their positions within either their positions as business owners or their position as owners of brothels or gambling institutions. The other side of Speer, however, that I find remarkable is that he also was the person who started the City Beautiful movement in Denver. And if you watch that short clip that I have provided this week, it kind of tells you a little bit about the City Beautiful movement. And I want you to understand what that really meant for the people and how it actually helped Denver. So you have people like Speer who were not all bad but not all good at the same time. So you have this kind of dichotomy working. From political corruption comes a desire to reform, obviously. And that's where we start to look at populists and progressives. Populists were basically people who would work for miners and farmers. They were looking to help miners and farmers reform those sort of labor movements, whereas progressives are people who were trying to fight for rights in some way or another. You know, in any given case, not all populists and not all progressives, of course, were fighting for the same thing. However, generally speaking, progressives were people who might fight for political rights for women, for prohibition, for fighting against gambling, brothels, or the juvenile justice system, for a more humane juvenile justice system. You have people like Justice Lindsay, who was in Denver during this time, and he fought valiantly for a juvenile justice system that would not punish juveniles in the same manner that they punished adults. And he felt like this was fair and humane treatment for juveniles. So when we look at progressives, we're looking for equal rights in some form or another, or a reform of the system so that things like gambling, women being prostitutes, or alcohol were not doing things to society that they didn't see fit. So this week, as you can see, we looked a little bit at Denver. You can see how it became the capital of Colorado, but you can see that with its quick rise to power and its huge influx of people, there also came a lot of problems. So I want you to think about what those problems look like, how they were solved, and what good came out of them when we're thinking about why Colorado is the place it is today, and moreover, why Denver became the place it is today too.